Good morning, West USA. Welcome to our weekly webinar. New name. I got it right.
There we go.
No, not till January.
Oh, not till January. All right. Well,
God,
then
dude.
pretend
Sneak
you
preview.
didn't hear a word of it. So big props to Nick Wiedekamp. He actually has a open tryout session for any West USA agent that wants to go down and try out for the Cardinals, play quarterback. So great job on that.
I'm the same size as Kyler, actually, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right. Appreciate everybody joining us today. Little sneak peek at what we got coming up. Todd, of course, here is going to give us our numbers. Matt Baker with the Bookspan Baker team going to give us our mortgage minute. And Todd, I'm going to share 3 ways to cultivate buyers for the long haul.
Oh, that's
Two groups of buyers right now, buyers that aren't getting intimidated by interest rates and buyers that are waiting for interest rates to come down. So we're going to talk about how to cultivate those. And then we have our managing broker, Kyle Fouts, here, going to just enlighten us with some incredible knowledge and wisdom. As always, if you've got any comments or questions, email us at webinar@westusa.com. All right, let's get into the announcements. If you have not attended one of our corporate orientations for new agents, we have one coming up this morning at 10:30. All events, all announcements that we make today can be found on your dashboard. Just look up the calendar, click the appropriate event, and get signed up. So if you have not attended our agent orientation, we highly recommend that you hang out with us later on this morning. We have React kicking off tomorrow. So that is our introduction to all of the technology that West USA has to offer. So you want to make sure you get signed up for that if you haven't. We're all right. Canva Training 101 coming up. That is November 7th at 11 o'clock here at the North Phoenix office. So Canva is a great
I've been talking about it for years.
Great website. I use it all the time for graphics and things like that. So if you're not aware of it, you want to make your own open house flyers and memes and things like that, you'll want to attend this event. All right, we got our Goodyear office meeting coming up tomorrow as well at the Palm Valley Community Center. It's all about accounting and tax preparation. So if you don't know, if you've never heard of the term quarterlies, you may want to attend. If you don't know what a PLLC is, you may want to attend. Also, we have on Tuesday from 1 to 4, we have a special class all about divorce real estate. So hey, one thing we know, when the economy suffers, divorce rate is high. So you might want to check this one out. We also have our office meeting at Kierland going on Wednesday. This is in person with Clint Fouts and Nick. Look at you, Nick. You just
got called up to the big time, buddy.
Yeah, we called down to the bullpen. We brought in, never mind. So that's going on this Wednesday at the Kierland office. Todd's got his next CE class. I just got my notification from the Department of Real Estate.
Ooh.
I got about 6 weeks.
It was a notification that was for license renewal, right?
It was.
Okay, just checking.
So I dug into my file and found out what CE classes I am missing. So if you're looking for 3 hours of disclosure law, that is coming up Wednesday, November 9th. All right, Dean Becker is going to be hanging out at the Ahwatukee office coming up this Thursday from 10:30 to 11:30. Lunch will be provided. So if Don, if you're listening, shoot me a little text. I'm kind of curious to see what is being served. That always is the determining factor of whether I show up or not.
Oh, it's good stuff over there. I saw the menu.
All right, Armless training. So how to use Armless to generate more leads. So this is going to be an in-person class this Thursday from 10 to 11:30 at the Surprise office. And Popeyes for this time of year, that's coming up this Friday, November 9th at the Chandler office from 1 to 3. And as I mentioned, we go through these announcements really, really fast, but they all can be found on the West USA calendar. Just access your dashboard. And then, of course, every Monday afternoon, Don't Do That with Bob Stevens from 2 to 2:30. All right, Todd, what is going on?
Okay, so here we are. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Today we're going to be going over the Greater Phoenix Metro housing stats for the week ending April 11th. And later today, if you check on your, what's going on here, guys?
Did I mess them up?
Yeah, no slides in there. Oh, I guess I'm not doing it. I guess we're just going to go right to Matt. So I guess you'll all have to see.
You can't blame me for this one, brother.
On this one, brother.
This is my bad.
I'm going to be doing the market stats for the month ending October, just following the meeting, and then I'm going to be posting those onto the dashboard. So I will include the week-over-week numbers as well.
Do we have, by any chance, access to them via email, Nick, or is that just?
Yeah, if you guys can. Do you want to have Baker go, and let me see if I can what I can do.
All right, yeah, let's have Baker go.
That's
see
fine.
If we can't bring him back.
Sure.
All right, Matt.
Well, okay. No, I better wow you. So here's the market update. If you move it along to the market, rates are where they are. Isn't that funny? That sounds really bad. 7.5, mid sevens. This is kind of where we sit right now. I think the horizon though is, obviously the Fed met last week, created kind of a lot of buzz. But more in particular, I think the inflation number come Thursday is going to be it. And so in the slides, I don't know if you could still see those up there, but you've got your I kind of put up the one slide, which is the 30-year mortgage rate. And if so, go to the next one, you'll see that 30-year mortgage rates. And so look back over the last 30 years, look at where the rates have been and look at where we are. I mean, it's not, it's not terrible. Okay. Right. I mean, yes, we've gone, where were we in 2020 versus where we went to in 2022, of course, is going to have a bit of a shock. But when you look back kind of at the macro level at whole, the market is really good. Yeah, and so, I get it. Rates in the sevens don't feel good, but I think the market is now, every conversation I have with a real estate agent is talking about temporary buy downs and the power of using points and all of those things. I mean, when I teach Marge's class, the ProStar or the loans in process class to new agents, I mean, we have to talk about discount points is not a bad thing, right? Remember, it's prepaid interest and you can use it and you can be creative with it and you can get tax deductibility and all those kinds of things. And so, for so long that was such a negative word, like points. Oh, don't buy points. But it could actually be a benefit right now, depending on a particular buyer's interest, and temporary buy downs, even in particular, when you really feel like interest rates will be better in a year or two. So that's that slide. And if you go to the next slide, if you can, you got your inflation week, right? So Thursday, not only a big week, you got election, but then Thursday you got inflation. And I'm anticipating, so look back here at that slide, and this is a newer but old version. You've seen this before. 0.9 is what we're replacing on Thursday. So if it could be 0.5 or less, what happens is now you go from an 8.2, 8.3 inflation rate to in the 7. And that 7 number is sort of a signal, especially for people that don't really watch the market, it's kind of a headline number that's going to lead them to say, okay, inflation's starting to come down, right? So having that is like a psychological thing, I think will benefit the interest rate market, and hopefully we get a little bit of reprieve, because it's been kind of a rough ride the last 9 months, and obviously buyers are on that proverbial fence, and I think most realize date the rate, marry the house. Let's go find a house. Let's go get negotiating. Let's try to win a little bit. And if you can get a property, you're talking about a year or two in refinance. And that's where a temporary buy down comes into play. All right. And then last one was kind of the jobs market. Jobs market report also came out last week. Thought it was interesting. From a follow-up standpoint, you've got the jobs number came out actually greater than what they expected, but the unemployment rate actually went up. And what I wanted to, and I thought was most interesting, was that the average hourly earnings was also up 4.7% year over year, which doesn't negate the 8% inflation. I get that, but it's not as, if that hourly earnings was flat or negative and you had inflation the other way, it would feel a little different. And I think that's where you get in the economy. You hear all these reports of like people are still spending, like still, profits are still good. Now everyone's outlook is negative, like, oh, it's going to be slow, it's slowing. All their future outlooks are less than what they are currently. And I think a lot of it right now is that spending is still occurring because people are still making a little bit more. They do have savings from COVID and stuff where people just didn't eat out as much. And so there's still a lot of spending happening. What happens in the, this fourth quarter and the future quarters, who knows? But again, that's kind of the market, financial piece. Again, reminder, I have several people from West USA that are going to come either in person or on Zoom. We're starting this mastermind. We're going to be doing accountability. We're going to be talking about markets. We're going to be talking about lots of different things. Todd Bookspan is going to be with me, so it's we're tandeming it or tag teaming it, and he does the win by noon and the planner and how to be organized and accountability and discipline, all the things you need right now to be successful. So I think if you make a priority here, it could be really good for your business, and come check it out on Zoom or in person. That's what I got for the day.
All right. Appreciate it, Matt.
Cool, Matt.
Great stuff. Sorry for all the confusion. And Nick, good job getting this put together. Todd, I literally don't know where I copied and pasted your slides to.
Okay.
They're somewhere
There's
in
no
some
problem.
sort of presentation on my laptop.
You know what? That's one of the things that you and I do real well is we just keep going. we don't worry about, what happens. It's how you react to it. Okay, everybody, thanks for joining us. We're going to go over the market slides for the week ending November 7th and what's happening. Let's get right into it. Take a look. 57 days closed on market. Our month supply is at 5.13 months. 19.5% absorption rate. Our list prices are hovering about 688,000, and hovering is a new word this in the stats. 543,000 is the average sale price. Our average list price to sale price retention at 97.09. Inventory took a little bit of a hit this week. 21,129, down almost a point. Pending is at 2755, and closed units for the month to date of November is just too early to tell, of course. New listings, we only took 1,572 listings this past week. That's down significantly. As everybody knows, my favorite number is above 2,000, 2,400 specifically. Days on market for closed at 57. Looking at our price ranges, we have the under $500,000 market has climbed up to 56.84%. And again, as close to 60% as we can get with that number, the better. We were at 72% of our entire MLS inventory being under 500,000 right about 2019, right before COVID hit in 2020. We were as low as 44% in this particular category. So being at 56.84, that's a really super thing. That means there's a lot more first-time homebuyer homes in the marketplaces. There's more workforce housing. So this is a very, very good sign. Looking at the $500 million category, representing 32%, pretty stable at this particular moment. And of course, right underneath the red box, if you look at the $1 million and up category, again, static at 10.5%, 10.9%. So we look at the slides, at the market spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet gives us that opportunity to compare numbers. Center of the column is the 2019 same week. To the left of that is 2021 same week, and then of course week over week in the white columns. So we're going to look down at November 7th is today. Last week we had 1,592. We took 1,572 listings this past week. That's continuing to slide. If you take a look, if you join me for the month-end numbers, which we'll be posting on the closed Facebook groups, we'll go into this in a little more detail. Taking a look at active inventory, 21,129. Second week in a row we slipped just a little bit, but hey, 21,000 versus 8,300 last year versus 14,600 back in one of the best years of our cycle at 14.6. 21,000 is great inventory. 448 coming soon properties, 17,561 single family non-distressed, 2,526 new homes. And again, you'll see all these columns, including the non-distressed at 21,073. You'll see all these columns are in the red, which basically meant we slid in every single category. And again, when we take a look at the pending being 27 that went down from 28, we've never seen, and this is since 1994, we have never seen pending numbers under 3,100 ever. And in the last 4 weeks, almost 5 weeks now, if you include today, we have been under 3,000 pending. What does that mean? 3,000 average properties in escrow at any one time. This needs to be 5,000. It needs to be, because 5,000, when you take into consideration 2,000, 2,400 new listings being added, will end up at the end of the month with about a 2.5 to 3 month supply. And that is the sweet spot of real estate. And so right now being at 2,755. Now we always have December being slow. But to my earlier point, we've never seen it under 31. And the only time we've ever seen it in the 3000s was during the month of December, which is usually the cooling off month before everybody goes back to work January 1st. Taking a look at closed inventory, like I said, is way too early to tell there. 5 months supply is where we're at today. We were at a 4.16 month supply last week. If you want to look at last year, we weren't even at a 1 month supply. And back in 2019, we were at a 1.84 month supply as inventory started to contract because we had more and more buyers coming into Arizona. But today we're at 5.13. So from a seller's point, this is affecting days on market. Days on market, you can expect to see climb. We are down here looking at the days to market. We're sitting at 57 right now. I'm telling you that this needs to be at 70. So going all the way to 70 is not going to be a bad thing. It's just a psychological thing for you and your client because of the fact that you have to understand, what do I now need to do to sell a listing? Before it was put it in the MLS and just keep breathing, and it was going to close. Today, that's not the case. Properties are taking longer. You've got to go back to quote unquote real estate. We've had it so good for so long. Now it's going to be back to, okay, the market shifted. Interest rates are at 7.5%. What are you going to do? Oh, market just shifted. Average close on market is now at 70 days. Properties aren't selling. What are you going to do differently? And if you don't know what to do, you need to get a hold of, take some sales classes, or talk to a mentor, talk to your office manager, get some help. But this is a normal market. And if you look at it historically, as Matt Baker did in our Mortgage Minute, you're going to see that, that when I say to everybody, I'm looking at a 30,000 foot view, I use transparencies. I compare week over week, year over year. The reason why I can see more clearly than the average realtor who's emotionally into it, because they're hearing the consumer's complaints, you're hearing your own financial slowdowns, and it's hard for you to see the forest through the trees. But if you take a moment and you really look at the overlays, what you're finding is we are still in a super position, 4% inflation, 4% appreciation next year, 8% this year. We've only had a 10% increase in average sale prices year to date. So, these are all good signs for the marketplace, and we'll see. Join me, please, if you would, later for the month-end stats. Thank you.
Well, and what I would say to your point and to Matt's point, so how I see these numbers is I love the fact that, for me right now, working with buyers with high interest rates, I love pendings as low as possible or low right now, because nobody likes to spend two sets of loan costs. Okay. That doesn't sound like fun. Nobody really wants to spend money on one set of loan costs. So with pendings down, meaning in December being slow, I am telling all my buyers, we are gearing up for December. Okay. You're going to refinance, but on the first set of loan costs, chances are we're going to get the seller to pay for them, or most of them. So really your first set of loan costs is when you're going to refinance next year when interest rates, if they drop, which I anticipate that they do. So it's a matter of just how you interpret the data. For me, I'm busy.
Well, then you can also, when you refinance, you can roll them into your loan. So you're not actually, you can't do that on a purchase. So have them paid by the seller at the front end and then refinance them and roll them into your loan amount on the back end. It's not a direct dollar expense. I mean, it is rolled in, so it's still there, but it's something to think about.
You don't have to come up with it.
All right. So that's kind of awesome. The segue into cultivating buyers for the long haul. I don't know whether long haul is one word, two words, or hyphenated. I wasn't really sure.
I'm going to go guess and say you did it wrong.
Okay, it's always a safe assumption. It doesn't look right, but it feels right. But anyway, so as I mentioned early on, Todd, I feel like there's two sets of buyers out there right now. There are buyers that are getting it and not getting intimidated by the higher interest rates, understanding that the high interest rates are providing an incredible opportunity. But you can't convince every buyer of that, and not every buyer is going to be comfortable with it. So the second group of buyers are, I'm going to wait till next year. I'm going to wait for interest rates to drop. I'm going to wait for this. I'm going to wait for that. So what we're going to talk about today is, for that category, how do you keep them cultivated? How do you keep in contact with them so that when interest rates do drop, or when they are ready, you are top of mind. So first point is you have got to really sit down and identify who these people are, and you have got to schedule regular check-ins. You've got to leverage your CRM for this. I've identified who my people are who are going to probably be buying next year. So what am I going to do? I'm going to utilize texting. I'm going to utilize video texts, which I think are highly, highly effective. And that's a matter of me picking up my phone, doing a 30-second video, and then texting that out. And then, of course, emails. Emails obviously always have the lowest open rate. So don't forget to actually use your phone for its intended purposes. And that is to play Candy Crush. In addition to that, pick up the phone and give them a call. Yeah. So if I've got somebody that I've identified are going to buy something in 2023, I'm going to determine the frequency in which I'm going to reach out to them. Is it every other week? Is it monthly? Whatever the case is. But the goal is to stay top of mind. So when they get ready, when they get to that point that they're ready to transact, what agent pops to their mind? What agent are they going to call? Or are they going to get that text message from you in that same week where they're ready to transact? But the only way to do it is to schedule all of these things through your CRM.
Definitely. I'd like to just say we all have a friend, I imagine, that we could not talk to, or just the way time works, we don't talk to for a period of maybe 6 months, a year, or maybe someone that was a childhood friend or a high school, college friend that you haven't talked to in 5 years. You get them on the phone and you immediately pick up from where you left off. I mean, there's just, so think about it from this perspective. When you pick up and you want to talk to your client, you want to be able to pick up where you left off in every conversation. Here's the problem. What did you do to earn that? When you had a friend and you were together, my gosh, you went through so much emotional crisis, whether it was college prep or whether it was, high school, wherever you had that friend, you shared everything and you communicated with them every day. Just like when you're working with someone as your real estate services, you're with them every single day. But even after the close, you've got to continue to stay in communication with them to earn the right, so that 30, 60, 90 days can go by and you can pick up the phone and have a conversation with them, and it can be just like you left it off. Otherwise, you haven't cultivated anything.
Yeah, and if they're going to buy something in 2023, chances are statistics suggest that they're going to use a real estate agent. Correct. So I always tell my team, it might as well be you. But in order to be you have to be top of mind. Yep. Number two, market updates. People are very, very curious. I would tune into this afternoon and check out Todd's month end. They're going to be very, very telling. But people want market updates. There's a reason why they're not buying right now. They are concerned about the market. Therefore, be that source of information. Don't let them rely on cable news and the sensationalism of the media, which in most cases, they're not necessarily wrong. They just don't take into Phoenix being a market that really is not part of, it's in its own little microcosm, right?
It is.
So first thing that I would do, if you haven't done it already, set up Google alerts for the Arizona real estate market, the Phoenix real estate market. If you don't know how to do it, I love this. Just go on Google and Google alerts, okay? And it'll tell you how to do it. And it's really easy. So almost every single morning, I get an email from Google showing me the news articles that pertain to the Phoenix real estate market. And I read them. And sometimes there's an article in there that, I'm going to send out to my clients. I'm going to email, or I'm going to post on social media. But I do always warn, if you do that, read the article, because sometimes these articles are put together by agents from other brokerages, and the last thing you want to do is send your clients to another
and it's opinion at that point.
And not only that, but you just don't, you want them being with you. You don't want them going someone elsewhere. Right. But post regularly. Be looking for, especially on social media, be looking for something to post every single week that pertains to the real estate market. This is something that people want to consume right now. But if something that relates to these buyers that you're cultivating on, long term, make this part of your regularly scheduled check-ins. And then again, send these updates. One of the things that Ryan and I do, and it's very effective. About once a month, we set up the phone. We do. I'd like to keep it at more like a minute, but with Ryan, they're about 5 minute videos. But they're market updates that go to all of our Loop
They're
guys.
awesome, Mike.
And you haven't even seen these ones. They strictly go to our Loop guys, and I put them on YouTube so I can keep track of open rates and so forth. But I'm telling you, we are the go-to guys for a lot of the pilots at Loop because they get these video texts.
You know, it's like advertising decades ago. You know, advertising was a big thing. You had to have your real estate sale, the property in a classified ad for real estate. It was a totally different world back then. But the fact was, if you had your ad in there one time and then you didn't run it again the next Thursday when the real estate section came out again, then you didn't hit all the eyeballs. But if you kept it consistent, you were there every single week, people knew they could count on you on Thursday to have your information available for them. Mm-hmm. This is what you've got to do with all of anything you're posting or you're sending out to people. If you're going to send something out and you're going to do and updates are great, use Dale's iFound agent websites for sending, what just hit the market. But if for updates on what's going on in the marketplace, this is the biggest reason why people aren't engaging, because they don't know how to navigate through what we're going through right now. Yep. So, if you haven't been there before, I mean, imagine the first time you ever got bumped on an airplane. Right? You got bumped off your airplane. It was like, oh my God, what do I do? After it's happened to you a few times, man, you're good at it.
You know where every bar is to every airport.
However you get over it or get back on base. But to this particular point, Mike, if you're going to start posting, you need to make sure you post regularly. It looks similar. Your branding is similar. So when the consumer sees it, they understand exactly what they're going to get.
Nick, I may or may not have Google alerts set for burgers.
I have a comment. So again, just to go back really quickly about posting regularly, a lot of agents they get turned off by that and they just stop listening and they're not going to do it because they don't know what to post. The Monday morning webinar has a tremendous amount of content that you can pull. Todd does his stats every single month. There's a lot of different avenues that you can pull from that is good, trustworthy content. And that's the important piece. Mike touched on it. Read the article before you post it. Please, please. Read the article. Don't read the subject or the headline and go, I'm going to post that, because you don't know where the article is going to turn. And in our sensational news media, where they have to be the hottest topics, you could be posting bad information based on what you guys talked about, the Arizona marketplace. So be the person giving the expert information. Don't try to put your opinion like Mike and Todd were saying. There's a lot of good stuff that you can post out there. Don't just make up news.
If I had $1 for every time my program director at KTAR told me, please read the entire article and not just the headline.
That's why you're not on the news anymore, buddy?
This is why I don't have a Monday through Friday drive time show.
That was one of the things you posted, saying thank you very much for that education.
All right. And then one of the things that I like to do is featured properties. Obviously, you're working with buyers who are down the road. You kind of got an idea of what they're looking for. Case in point, I got a guy over at Luke Air Force Base, having a hard time nudging him. But he's very, very specific what he wants. West Side under a certain price point, has to have an RV garage, and whatever the case is. So I've got a little alert set in Arma. So every once in a while, and I did this the other day, and actually one of our agents posted something on our closed Facebook group. It matched what he was looking for perfectly. So I just got the MLS link and I texted to him, hey, this one just popped up. So keep them interested and deals that are out there. Keep their appetite wet, because you never know when that right property is going to pop up. So I like to, every month on my long-term buyers, at least once a month, or maybe even more if something pops up, just text them a monthly featured property that fits their particular buy box. I'll also include off-market properties. Hey, I just found out this one's coming to the market. Check this one out. And, send it via text. And we talked a lot about text messages, and it's a good reminder, Nick. Text messaging has the highest open rate than any other form of marketing.
Yeah. Nick, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, once we get through this next week, when you can hit stop on all the political ads that you're getting, texts will and are always going to be the highest open rate. We're getting spammed really badly right now, but that will calm down, and then people will get back to the regularly scheduled text they're looking for.
Yeah, this featured properties, Mike, is a good thing. You can send this directly to your consumers. The one thing you could also do is before you send it, contact your lender, find out how much down payment it needs, find out what monthly payment it is, send a Reg Z along with the monthly payment and the down payment requirements, along with potentially, or follow up with potentially that property you sent them.
We need to talk about the mobile app and all of the great software the mobile app. We have to do another webinar on this.
We'll do that. But the other thing I was going to say about featured properties, and better yet than just sending them a link from Armless, if you do have a West USA iFound agent website, get the link from that so that when you do send it out, it's driving them to your website. So speaking of elections, political ads, I did write in Kyle Fouts' name to be governor. So you got
well.
one.
So far, so good. I'm not sure where we're at with that, but it's still up in the air.
Still early. It's still early.
Yeah. So all
Well,
right.
I don't know. According to some Channel 10, Katie Hobbs already beat Carrie Lake.
I don't know. Elections,
That got
my
posted by
understanding,
mistake.
tomorrow. So
Yeah, I
we'll
know.
find out.
What's up with that?
All right. Anyways, Broker Talk with Kyle Fouts. All right, Kyle, appreciate you joining us today. So, I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to reprimand our agents, okay? Because it's one of the things that just, I don't know, pet peeve of mine.
Okay.
When we have you in, or we have our brokers in, Nick's going to get flooded with questions, okay? And we always say, boy, if I had you the following week, we now got a set of questions and topics for you, but you're here this week. Every time you appear on the webinar, you post on our closed Facebook groups, hey, coming on the webinar, and that's why our viewership is down. They know ahead of time. But, what do you want to talk about? And it's like crickets.
It is. Yeah. I mean, we obviously want to bring relevant topics to you. We don't want to just kind of rehash the same issues that we've gone over again and again, although, our role does tend to bring those questions continuously. So we want to make sure we're touching on them for everybody, not just the office meetings that we might be at here and there. We want to get it out to the masses, but we also want to speak on things that are relevant to your world now. So that's why I go into the closed groups and ask for topics to be presented, because I would like to speak to something that's relevant to you, not just me giving you information that maybe you're not too concerned with.
All right, so let's talk about the first one. I may or may not have done this, so I'm curious to know what the answer is.
Okay. May or may not. I like that.
We'll see. We'll see where this conversation goes.
We will.
All right, so a licensee lists her house for sale, obviously owner agent. She decides to, and this would be a good place to remind everybody, if you do that, you have to have an owner agent writer.
100%.
Okay, see,
Yep.
I did know that. All right, she decides to hold an open house to try to procure a buyer for the property.
Right.
Question, can a licensee hold an open house to procure a buyer for her own personal property or own house? And then if an unrepresented buyer comes to the open house, can the owner agent represent them? Why or why not?
Right. What part of that did you do?
That's a good question,
Can we
Kyle.
start with that?
No, I have held my own houses open.
Sure. And that part's fine. That to me, that was not the real intent of this question.
Okay,
not the
my
information I wanted to
intent
get
was
out,
not
but-
necessarily to sell my house, because we actually weren't interested in selling the house. I just needed buyers. So
we'll talk about that later. That's
years ago,
not-
maybe
okay.
way
Way prior to West USA.
years ago.
Okay.
But I told my wife, hey, let's just put an open house sign out there, meet some buyers, and then take them out shopping.
Nice.
Yeah. So the answer to the second question is, if an unrepresented buyer comes to the house, can the owner agent represent them? The answer is emphatically no.
Emphatically is the right way to state that, Todd. You are correct. And that's
Well, you didn't let me get a chance to finish the answer. I was going to say no.
Gee.
good. Well, nice. I'm glad that you said that, Mike. That's what I was hoping for. And why would that be? Why would they not be able to do that?
Well, I mean, for me, it's there is no way you can convince me that you can provide that buyer fiduciary responsibility that they deserve.
Correct.
There's no way.
And so the question we always get is like, I know we have a ton of good agents that are out there that can do an absolutely capable and solid job representing a buyer. But the problem is, it doesn't matter how good of a job you do. If an issue arises down the road, there's going to be problems. You're never going to be able to convince somebody that you represented someone else's interest to the same degree that you would represent your own. It's just it's the way it works.
So then the question is, can you allow them to buy the house unrepresented?
And I have that in my notes. You can. It's a common misconception amongst agents that if you're the only agent in a transaction, you must be a dual agent. And that's just not the case. You can absolutely be a sole agent on either side. In this case, you're an owner agent selling your own property. So if they want to go unrepresented, they certainly can. If I'm an owner agent, I'm going to encourage them. I'm not giving them any advice, but I'm going to encourage them to seek outside counsel because I want them to have that representation. But they don't have to. That's their choice. They're adults. They can make the decision, take the risk that comes with it. It's just not going to be me who's guiding them. Okay. We had a situation come up recently. An agent asked me, okay, but this agent or this buyer who's unrepresented wants me to write the contract for them, send it to them e-sign to be electronically signed. Can I do that? The answer is, can you do that? Yes. But here's how I would handle it. I mean, ultimately, first I would send them a blank contract, okay, because I want them to read through it. Then, if I did send them a contract that I had filled out, I would send it to them as a PDF first. I would not send it to them as to be able to be electronically signed, because we all know people click, yep, and they're done. It leaves open the argument that, hey, you slipped something in here that I wasn't prepared for, that I didn't notice, and now you the professional has taken advantage of me, the poor consumer. And that's clearly not what we're doing here. You've asked me to write the contract. I'm doing that. So when I send that as a PDF, I'm telling you, please read through this very, very carefully. These are the points that you wanted me to include in this contract. Please take it to an attorney. Please take it to a trusted source. Whoever you see fit to vet this contract, please do that. And once you've done that, then I can send it to you as a DocuSign, an e-sign,
Are there any
et cetera.
disclosures that you need to make on page 8? Anything?
Yeah, just other than the fact that the owner is a licensed agent in the state of Arizona, no. That is the important one to get out of there when owner agents are.
All right, and a good point. Nick reminded us. We do have quite a few agents on our Monday morning webinar that aren't with West USA. You should be. So this would be the time to say you need to confer with your own broker.
Thank you. Yes, that absolutely. Don't take my advice. Take your own broker. It's not going to say like, listen, I heard Kyle say this. They're not going to care. Although I'm right.
Yeah. All right. So I actually had this happen.
Okay.
So
unfortunately.
Yep. So an owner of a property commits suicide in the home. The personal representative of the owner's estate did not disclose this in the SPUDs. So did not disclose that there was a suicide in the home. After the inspection period had expired, the buyers learned from the neighbor that the seller had committed suicide in the home. Can the buyer cancel the contract? My situation was a little different, but I actually was the buyer. But I would say my understanding is that a death, regardless of how the death occurred, unless the house was haunted and it was a ghost, that it is not something that needs to be disclosed. Therefore, I would say that the buyer cannot cancel the contract because of this.
So it doesn't. 322156 Arizona Revised Statute says that there are 3 things that a real estate agent and the seller cannot be found litigiously liable for not disclosing. One is sex offender site, sex offenders in the neighborhood. 2 is the if someone that possesses the home had AIDS or HIV, and the third one is that there was a horrific crime, whether it was a homicide, a suicide, or some kind of felony that was committed in or on the property, then the listing agent and the seller would not be found litigiously liable. But the question is, can the buyer cancel a contract? And the situation would be not for that particular purpose. They can cancel a contract. It's outside the inspection period, so they don't have those same rights that they would have had if they hadn't yet submitted the BINSR. So from that particular perspective, they can always cancel, but they should go to an attorney and find out what their liability is.
That is 100% the answer. Yeah, that's to me the reason I brought this up. The answer, the stigmatized property laws. Most agents are aware of that and know that issue does not need to be disclosed unless you're directly asked. If you're directly asked a question, has somebody died in the property, you can't overtly lie. And you can't say, I don't know if you do. You can say, legally, I'm not obligated to answer that, which if you answer that way, you know what the answer is, right? We know, and that's okay. But that's your right. You don't have to overtly disclose it. Why I wanted to bring this up is because there are a lot of things contained in the due diligence section of the purchase contract, section 6, that are bolded, that ask for the buyer to investigate if it's material to them. Things like square footage and flood hazard insurance, sewer connection. This is also one of those things. You know, if someone passes away in the property you're about to purchase, is that material to you? It may or it may not be. But as agents, we need to make sure that our clients are fully aware of what we need to be looking at during this due diligence section. Because when does the square footage often come up? During the appraisal,
yeah.
right? So if I'm buying a house that's said to be 2,400 square feet, appraiser does the appraisal and it comes back at 2,000, but it comes in at value. My buyer says, wait a minute, I'm paying X for a 2,400 square foot house. I don't want to pay that for a 2,000 square foot house, right? That's something they should have investigated during the due diligence period. It just, a lot of things get kind of skimmed over when it comes to, yeah, you'll have your home inspection. Yes, you'll have your termite inspection, but these things are not necessarily specifically pointed out. And so when they become an issue and the agent points out this section of the contract, the client is, often has the argument of, well, wait a minute, I didn't know that. You were supposed to advise me of that, right?
Yeah, and giving them also a copy of the buyer advisory document, which is
100%.
great because it's got every single website and link and everything else. But more importantly than anything, the SPDS and the buyer advisory teach people things that they possibly didn't know they could investigate. And that's another issue, is the fact that, the consumer may have found a particular item offensive or as a material fact of now they want to pay less or not buy the house.
Right. Yeah. It's just make sure, I guess the point of the question was just to bring up the fact, make sure that obviously we're all going through the contracts with our clients, but be very diligent in those sections to say, we need to look at this. We need to look at that, just to make sure that it's clear in their mind, the things that they should be looking at. Make sure you document that as you do all things email wise, just to make sure that you have proof when they say you didn't tell me.
All right. Number 3, obviously, and this is one of the things that I wanted to have a discussion with you about, but there's been a distinct shift in the market dynamic over the last several months. And, and what are the differences in conversations that we are encountering with our clients? What types of things are we seeing that were non-existent in last year's market, and what do we need to be careful of? And the reason that I brought this up, because last year, when it was a seller's market, the conversations that we were having with buyers, and I talked to my attorney I had breakfast with him about 2 months ago, and I go, are you seeing activity with buyers coming to you and saying, hey, my buyer's agent didn't really explain things. I kind of felt pressured into buying something above list price, waiving appraisal, waiving inspections, and so forth. So I don't want to harbor on that. We're in a different market. So are we saying things to our sellers that potentially could get ourselves into trouble?
Well, and that's where we as agents have to be very careful with how we frame our conversations with our clients. It's never about what they must do and what they have to do. It's always, here are your options. Here are the things that we have seen be successful for other people. Here are things that other people are potentially doing that might make their property more desirable to the consumers that are out there when we're competing with, as Todd said, 20,000 plus listings versus 8 last year. I mean, it's a very different market, and those conversations need to be had with our clients, making sure they understand what they can do to make their property maybe a little more desirable versus what they must do or should do. It's just, those are the kind of conversations when you talk about buyers, agents now maybe being a little bit in the hot seat. It's because agents were telling or could be telling their clients that, you have to pay above list, you have to waive the appraisal, you have to waive the inspection. Otherwise, you're just not going to win the bidding process, which it may have been accurate in some respects, but it's not. You have to. The buyers and clients, I guess I shouldn't just say buyers, but clients always have an option. They're just simply options for people to either take or not take.
Remember, and I think Todd, for me, like, it's how do we present price to a seller in this market, as opposed to, like, I know that if we want a shot at selling your home, we've got to be at this price. But I can get myself into some trouble in how I present that.
Well, that's where the statistics that we do every Monday have really fall into your lap. We do the list price to sell price retention, which basically tells you what the average seller in the MLS is discounting or accepting within the offer. There are clues, and we try to explain how the statistics, how it affects your business and what you need to do to overcome that. Mike, we talk about what took place over the last 3 years, which we're not going to digress to. However, realtors are the part of or the job is to share what I call historical perspective. You're not supposed to speculate on where the future is going. You're not supposed to speculate on what the house will be worth based on even a common 4% appreciation, which we all know. You're not supposed to talk about future value because you cannot guarantee the market is going to do that. And just to Kyle's point, and Michael, to your point, when we were telling people they had to pay more than comparable value, not fair market value, because fair market value is what the willing buyer and a willing seller come together on, but comparable value. When you start doing so I'd say the answer today to initiate the conversation is to say, Mr. or Mrs. Smith, here are the comparables. The comparables, show the last 6 months of any activity that's taken place within the neighborhood. We do and explain what you're putting into the computer, 10% high and low square footage, the same year, similar like properties, and what your objective is. And then when you get that number, Mr. or Mrs. Smith, here's what the market says your property should be listed for. You can use the statistics to validate your position, but the moment you speculate, that's where liability comes in.
Kyle, can I go to a seller and say, okay, to Todd's point, I'm not an economist, but based on my numbers, based on my experience, and based on my research, if I was the owner of your home,
sure,
and I was going to put that house on the market, this is what I would list it for.
That's, as agents, we're going to have that conversation day in and day out, and that's okay. That the way you frame that was fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just when you give it more as a directive to a client that this is what you must do, or this is what you have to do to sell your house. That's not maybe not accurate. It could be, it comes from the same place, but just the way that you approach that conversation can make a big difference in the mind of a client.
Just remember, whenever you present something, you have to not only present the positive, you have to present the negative as well. So the consumer's context is, okay, this could happen and I could benefit, or this could happen and I could lose.
Right. We're not,
It's not just one side of that equation, even if it is something we would do.
Well, and that's the market conditions advisory. That's why it's a big get out of jail free ticket.
Yeah. And then the other thing I would tell them, if it was my house and I was bringing an agent over, I would have a bottle of Maker's Mark and a steak on the grill.
Right. You have that conversation before you get there. Yes.
All right. So Tales from the Courtroom. Going to be honest.
Don't know.
No idea what we're talking about.
Yep, that's okay. And I figured that would be the case. It's just, this is something, if you go to the AAR online website, okay, the Arizona Association's website, and you type in the little search Tales from the Courtroom, there's a few articles written by Michelle Lind, who's the past CEO. She's an attorney. She's fantastic. But this one brought up a conversation that I thought was worth having a chat about. So essentially what happened is this agent was part of a buying or representing a buyer purchasing a hillside lot in an exclusive part of town. Obviously, there was some back and forth about a road. There was no access at the point that they purchased it. Anyway, that transaction closes. Those buyers turn into sellers, go to list the property. And the new buyers that are coming in have conversations with this particular agent who helped on the purchase side of it and is now the listing agent, wanting to know about the access and the road that's going to be built or that is being built. And at all points, these buyers, it sounded like, given the article, and you can read it at that on the website, but they went back to this point several times over the course of the escrow, asking about the road. And the agent was taking the information that he learned from the purchase, and he was specific. He was giving that information to the buyers in this situation, but not telling them, essentially, you need to go research this on your own. He wasn't their representative. He was not a dual agent. They had their own representation, but they were always pushing this road issue with him. I mean, long story short, you can see where it's going. He says, yes, the road's fine. The road's fully permitted. We have all the things that we need. The road's not going to be an issue. They purchase the lot. They close escrow. They go to build their dream home side of the mountain, and now they can't get the road permitted. Okay. That's a big issue for agent number one, right? And so what I wanted to get out of this is essentially clients and even customers in this case, people look to us as agents because we're the ones that are in front of them. They want you to be all things at all times. You're the one they're communicating with on a daily basis. We have to be careful with how we answer that. The natural inclination is to want to help, to want to give the information they're seeking, right? We all want to do that. But that gets us into a position of liability very quickly, right? You're making estimated or, you're giving information that you're being given, so you feel that as though it's accurate, but now you're taking ownership of that information by giving it to someone else. And what do we learn when we're in real estate school? It's one of the first things they teach you. Be the source of the source. You don't want to be the source of the information personally. You want to make sure that you're pushing them to a place that is the source for this information. That takes the liability off of your shoulders, and it also keeps you from guessing, right? You just don't want to be in that position. And it's an easy place to get to.
It's like using another agent's school codes or using another agent's last tax.
Why are you looking at me when you said that?
Well, no, I'm just saying.
I may or may not have done that before.
Sewer septic issues, again, the last seller said it was on sewer, but afterwards they find out it's really on septic. But you were the listing agent. You didn't investigate it. You didn't tell your seller to investigate it. You just used the previous agent's listing. These are all things that just obviously are going to come back to haunt us. And and moving forward on this particular topic, to your point, is you need to investigate this for yourselves.
Correct. Yeah. Or if people are asking you the questions and you don't know, you have to be okay saying, listen, I don't know. Like that's an okay response to a client or a customer's question. You don't know everything, right? Surprisingly.
Yeah. Shocker.
I know that's hard for you to hear, Mike, but it's the truth.
All right. Number 5, are single agent, dual agency, and dual agency with 2 agents the same? Are they handled differently? Ooh. Well, the answer to the first question is, well, of course they're not the same. You're talking about one person versus 2 persons. So that's my easy answer.
That's wow.
Wow. Okay.
Hadn't thought of that answer.
Yeah, gee, that's whether you fill out both lines on that form or only one.
No, so I would say no. A single agent, dual agency first of all, it comes down to the broker.
Correct.
Right? Who is the broker, and are both parties underneath the governance, which is not really quite the right term, but under the same brokerage and the same broker. So as a single agent doing dual agency, not only is Dwayne the designated broker in this, but I am now representing and trying to provide fiduciary responsibility to both parties. As far as dual agency with 2 agents, buyer has their own agent, seller has their own agent, but we have the same designated broker.
I am so glad you said that last comment. This is a thing that I think most real estate agents don't know. First of all, we all hear that the broker owns the listing. So the broker is the entity. Then the entity hires a designated broker that they designate to be the supervisor, and then that person has licensees and blah, blah, blah. They give you limited authority to enter into real estate transactions. So, okay, you're out there, you're working, you're a single agent, but who owns the listing? The broker does. So in actuality, I hear agents say this mistake all the time at an open house. Oh, I'm not the listing agent. As you can see on the sign, that's Mike Weinstein. I'm Todd Menard. I'd be your buyer's agent, and he would be representing the seller. That is not true. Both agents now represent both parties because the designated broker now represents both parties.
Correct. And that's what I wanted to get out of this essentially is they feel different because, being a single agent, dual agent, you're walking and towing that line, right? You're in the middle of it. You're just passing information back and forth. But it is in a limited capacity, which is why the document out there, consent to limited representation, exists, right? That's why you have them sign it prior to entering into the contract. But with 2 agents, that feels very much like a standard transaction. That feels like me with any other brokerage. I'm representing my client. That person over there, who I may or may not have met, is representing their client, and we're just going to kind of go to battle like we always do, right? It's trying to further the interests of our client. Excuse me. But at the end of the day, when I say, are they handled differently? They're not, and they can't be. Okay. And people, especially with a brokerage of our size that has 3,100 plus agents, we have to be conscious of the fact that there are going to be a lot of situations that arise where this comes to pass, where it is a listing of ours with a West USA agent and a buyer represented by a West USA agent comes in, regardless of kind of how that happens. Once it happens and you're in escrow, you have to treat it the same as if you were the single agent walking the middle line between the two parties. Okay. One agent cannot advise their side of the transaction to the detriment of the other side. And if you think about it, a lot of things that you would advise could potentially be viewed through the lens of being detrimental to the other side,
like
right?
Comps.
Just a lot of things. I mean, you're trying to further your client's position, but you have to be very conscious of, we're in a dual agent situation here. I need to be very careful again how I frame my conversations and the type of advice. It's always giving options. This is here is what you can do, not what I think you should do, because now I'm advising you, which could be to the detriment
All
of
right,
them.
so not to put you on the spot here, but I will.
Please.
Give me an example of where under a dual agency scenario where I might be advising my client to the detriment of the other party. Or Todd, feel free to jump in because Kyle's got that
deer in headlights.
Yeah.
I like specific questions, Mike. Open-ended things.
So then pick on my example
Okay.
after I'm done. One of the biggest things that it is that a buyer. Well, first of all, every agent at West USA is a listing agent for any listing West USA has. So when you're holding an open house thinking you're surfing for buyers, and you're not the person who signed the listing agreement with the seller, please understand your broker did, because the broker owns that listing. So it puts additional burdens upon that person. Like, for instance, you're there finding buyers, but that does not exonerate you from having to try to sell the house, knowing the feature benefits about the house, asking for the order, things of that nature. Only when the consumer says, yeah, there's nothing you could do that would make me want to buy this house. So maybe at that point you'll step over that imaginary line in the sand and start working with the buyer. Well, come over here on my computer. I've got properties like this that, I can take you to go see. Then all of a sudden the consumer comes to the realization, I really like that property. So now you got to go back to that original property, and they want you to pull comps. My understanding from years ago was that you can't pull comps if the comps don't justify the value of the listing. And so if you share comps with the buyer that say that the listing is overpriced, we now have potentially a fiduciary obligation issue with the seller.
Yeah, that's and that's something you would really never think of, right? Like, you're like, this is what I do day in and day out with my buyers. I'm going to pull comps. I want to show the value or show them what the prospective value is. And now it could be seen as detrimental to a seller. I haven't seen, that occurs day in and day out. Right. I haven't seen that be an issue, but it absolutely can. Like, you have to think about it from a seller's perspective in that specific instance. Could they frame it in a way that was detrimental to them? Because that's, at the end of the day, who's going to be the complainants in that potential lawsuit? Well, in that case, it would be the seller. You advise them to offer me a lesser price. That stuff, that's what you have to be careful of. Mike, to your point, I was trying to think of an example while Todd was talking. Maybe like an earnest money dispute down the road where a buyer does something potentially that they might not or maybe shouldn't have done, and now they're walking through that dispute path. And now
let me give you an example because we've got a minute. So I did this, but the listing agent, it was with a different brokerage. Mm-hmm. Listing agent, very clearly they wanted earnest money to go hard, VA loan, and wanted to write it, us to write in as is language. I told my client, listen, we can write in as is language all day long. It's not enforceable. We still have the right to do our inspection period. And still make requests. So let's just take advantage of the listing agent's ignorance because she got her license not too long ago. Would that be an example?
If they were both the same broker.
Correct.
If they were the same broker.
There's other things to unpack in that specific scenario that
we'll talk later.
Give us. Yeah.
Well, I know we're out of time, but here's the thing that I just like to make sure everybody understands. When we say to a customer, sign the real estate agency disclosure and election form, and we ask them to check that third, or we pre-check that third box that said, you're allowing me to show you properties listed with my firm. You better make sure they understand that if they decide they want to purchase that property, what the takeaway is as far as representation for them, because here's what most people say: I'll represent you and your specifically, and the listing agent will represent the seller specifically, but that doesn't work in a dual agency scenario.
Absolutely right, Todd.
Kyle.
Thanks for having me.
That was good,
You
man.
did
Good to see you.
last time subpar performance, today above
All the
average.
other brokers at West USA are on here, so we're going to pull them after.
I'm sure. I'll get
Appreciate it
them
as
text.
always, and I want to thank the entire team for a great podcast this morning. And we leave you. Oh, I didn't even read the quote of the day.
No,
Gosh,
no.
darn it!
Back.
Yep.
There we go.
Get
When
into
you
your burgundy
achieve
roll.
one dream, dream another. All right, now we get to the end. Appreciate everybody joining us. Go out and sell a home.
Go Notre Dame.